Yes, what a world, ladies and gentlemen. We are finally here. The 2022 FIFA World Cup match day 1 was today, the first and only match of today, as the host Qatar took on Ecuador. I am Carlos, the Swiss Army Knife. Of course, many of you know me from the Kirby on Sports podcast. This is, of course, the Kirby on Sports World Cup show, where we will be here every single day for the next 17 days, basically, to recap what has happened every day. Of course, today only one match to cover, which was the opening match, Ecuador versus Qatar. Tomorrow, we'll have 3 matches, but we'll get to that a little later. Of course, we're just going to talk about the opening match of the FIFA World Cup. Finally, after 4 long years of waiting, we have finally arrived. Actually, it was 4+ years because, of course, this is the first World Cup to happen in November. Normally, it happens in the summer. So if we were in the normal timeline, we would have already had the World Cup. But due to it being in the Middle East, they moved it to the winter time. So that way, you know, the weather wouldn't be too much of a factor. But that's besides the point. Here we go. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Of course, we have to thank our sponsors: PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corp, Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, and Barrett Pest and Termite Services. Of course, there is no hurry-up offense here. There is no real segment to really go into. We're just going to pretty much just break down what happened in the game, tell you my immediate reactions and thoughts to, you know, this opening match. And then we'll kind of preview a little bit of what's going to happen tomorrow. Of course, it's the big day tomorrow. It's the United States' debut in the World Cup, or in this edition of the World Cup. Of course, it's been 8 years since they've played, but we'll get into that a little later. Let's go ahead and jump into Ecuador versus Qatar. Ecuador beating Qatar 2-0. 2-0. The famous scoreline of a USA-Mexico match. Yeah, not the best performance by Qatar at all, actually. It was kind of stunning. You know, Ecuador pretty much came out and immediately dominated the match. They dominated the match from, you know, pretty much the start. You know, Qatar didn't really have anything. The thing that you could really point out was the physicality. They pointed out a lot during the broadcast with Stu Holden and, you know, John Strong, two of my favorite commentators. The thing about Qatar is, you know, they just couldn't match Ecuador's physicality, and the physicality was the key thing in this match. I think it really surprised Qatar. You know, they've never really been in this big of a tournament. You know, this is their debut in the World Cup. They didn't qualify. Technically, they didn't go through World Cup qualifying like, you know, Ecuador had to do. They were automatically put into the World Cup because of being the host nation. Which is, it shouldn't be a knock against them, but, you know, it does kind of come to the point of, you know, Ecuador's battle tested, and Qatar, while they've had some, you know, they won the Asian, you know, Federation Cup, you know, in 2019. They also had a pretty decent performance in the Gold Cup a few years ago, which they took the United States B team to the, you know, pretty much to the brink, you know, in Austin, Texas, I believe in the semifinals. You know, ultimately they've just never been on this grand of a stage before, and I feel like the moment was just too big for them. I feel like they didn't necessarily know how to really perform under the lights. You know, this is the World Cup. It's in your home nation. You've never played in the World Cup before. You got, you know, your countrymen just like all filling the stadium, and then you got this Ecuadorian team who didn't go to Russia, you know, 4 years ago. They missed that World Cup, but they were in the 2014 World Cup. So, you know, this is a team that kind of knows how to deal with, you know, with the World Cup and the grandest stage. And also they come from a more competitive federation, you know, in the South American Federation, the CONMEBOL Federation, where, you know, you have the likes of Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, you know, the list goes on and on. You know, they came out of that, you know, whenever you play down there, every match is big. Qatar just really looked like from the start, the moment was just too big for them. And, it really started with their goalkeeper. Their goalkeeper really struggled in the first half. As you can, some key stats, it was shot 6-5 in Ecuador's favor. No shots on target for Qatar. They really couldn't get anything going offensively. It started to show some things in the second half, but nothing really of consequence. The possession stats say 53% to 47%, but it really felt like Ecuador had the ball for most of the game, especially in that first half. It really just felt like it was Ecuador. And yeah, just really, Qatar didn't have any answers for them. They would get possession and they would just be kind of, too jumpy and making, these mistakes, on a throw-in, you're throwing the ball directly to the Ecuadorian player. Both teams committed 15 fouls, but, Qatar was very undisciplined. Four yellow cards, which is not great. Now you have 4 players on yellows. And you still got 2 more matches. Any one of those 4 players gets another yellow card, they're going to be suspended for the next game. If any of them get a yellow card against, I believe Senegal is their next match, they will then be suspended against Netherlands. They brought it up in the broadcast. Qatar didn't have unrealistic expectations. They kind of kept it. They weren't expecting to win this World Cup, but they at least wanted a good performance, and this was probably worst case scenario. They were completely outclassed. They had no answers. The quality of player was completely different, and it's insane considering that Ecuador is the 3rd youngest team coming into this World Cup. Only one of their players, which was the man of the match, who we'll talk about, Valencia. I'm sorry, I had to pull up some stats, but yeah, which was Valencia, the man of the match in my opinion. He scored 2 goals. Should have been 3 goals. He should have had a hat trick, but there was an offside ruling on the first goal, which I'll get into. It's a very annoying rule. Yeah, he's the only guy who really has World Cup experience. He's the captain. He scored 3 goals in 2014 in the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. He scored 3 goals there, and here he scored 2. He was an absolute menace out there, and it should have been 3 goals. Luckily, the soccer gods were friendly and gave him and let him have justice and redemption from that terrible offside call, which by the letter of the rule was correct. But let's be honest, it was a dumb decision. To me, the player was still onside because there's a guy further back behind the goalkeeper, but unfortunately the offside line goes to where the goalkeeper kind of is. It's a weird rule. I don't understand it, and I think that FIFA should really consider changing that. Yeah, this is the 3rd youngest team, only behind Ghana and of course the United States, and yeah, they came out to play. Like, they came out and they look like a real contender to get out of this group. I believe that they are now probably, you win your first match, you're almost guaranteed to get out. You really realistically need to just win one more game and you're through. 6 points is usually the goal to get out of the group stage section of the tournament. And I truly believe that Ecuador, that was a really great performance by them, and I think this is going to give them a lot of confidence going into the Senegal match with Senegal that doesn't have Sadio Mane playing with them, so they might be there for the taking. And of course, a big match against Netherlands, next for them, they have a big match against Netherlands, I believe is their next opponent. Let me just double check that for a second. But yeah, I was very impressed by Ecuador, and yeah. So the next match would be Qatar, Senegal, and then Ecuador, Netherlands. That'll be Friday. But yeah, I believe this is going to give Ecuador a lot of confidence. Of course, like I said, they only need to win one more game, and then chances are they win the group. A draw also keeps them in contention. The only thing that they want to try to avoid is a loss here, because then it kind of comes down to the last game, and you don't really like to leave things up to the last game, especially with a Senegal team who's going to be able to match them with, the physicality and the quality aspect of it, right? So the Qatar win was huge. They needed this, and they did well. For Qatar, it was just so surprising because, I brought it up a little earlier. They are the Asian Federation Cup champions. Of course, that's not a very strong federation. There's not a lot of great teams in that, area. But they had such a great performance in the Gold Cup. And the Gold Cup is also another, kind of low-level type of, competition, where there's really only the big three kind of, it's Mexico, it's normally just the big two, Mexico and the United States. And then just more recently, Canada's kind of come onto the scene. But then you get the occasional dark horse of Jamaica who, can make a run at things. But yeah, it was super surprising how kind of timid and scared they came out. This was going to go one of two ways. Either they were just going to come out inspired, or they were going to, kind of fold under the pressure. And clearly they folded under the pressure. Of course, 2-0 is usually the most dangerous lead to have. And they got the lead, relatively early, I would say. Within 31 minutes, they were up 2-0. So there was still a whole lot of game to play. They didn't really make great. They tried to make second half adjustments and try to, press a little more, push the line up, try to put some pressure onto Ecuador, but Ecuador was just carving them up, and just realistically, Qatar didn't have the quality to keep up with these Ecuadorian players. Of course, like I said, Valencia was the man of the match. He was just a menace out there, and it was just, it was crazy how good they looked. Of course, another guy you want to kind of shout out was Mendez. Mendez had a fantastic game. Of course, he also he's on a yellow card, so he has to be very careful. 2 yellow cards for Ecuador, both of their central defensive midfielders. But yeah, just what more can you say about Ecuador? But I do want to bring up an interesting stat. So Qatar is the first host nation since they started doing the thing where the host nation opens the tournament. They haven't always done it. They started doing this in 2006, but prior to then, it was the defending champions would open the tournament. But yeah, since the host nation started opening the tournament, this is the first time that they have lost. 2006, Germany won. 2010, South Africa drew against Mexico. 2014, Brazil won, and then 2018, the last World Cup, Russia won their opening match. So for Qatar, they are the first. They are the first nation to open the host nation to open the World Cup in the opening match and lose. Of course, it was brutal. It was kind of hard to watch. Of course, the fans. It was a great atmosphere in the stadium, despite the fact that during the second half, the Qatari fans didn't really come back out. But the ones that did made plenty of noise, and of course the Ecuadorians brought the Ecuadorian fans brought the energy. It was a fantastic atmosphere, and it was a lot of fun to watch, man. I'm so happy, man. It's finally time. Like, the World Cup is here. Like, this is it. Like, this is why it's so special. It only happens every 4 years. And, there's been talk about trying to change it to 2 years, and I say no to that. Like, no, let's not do it. Match day 1 is so special just because we wait every 4 years for this, and it just feels so much more special. The world comes together, and they also brought this up during the broadcast, the things that we've been through in the past 4 years. We've had a global pandemic. We've had all these, like, problems in the world. But, like, for this, like, this game brings people together. Like, how, like, what they said it too. Like, what reason would a Qatar, would Qatar fans and Ecuador fans need like have to be in the same stadium? They rarely would ever play each other, and here they are playing each other on the biggest stage in the world, opening the tournament, and just bringing the energy. It was great. It was awesome to see. kind of sucks, to see the host nation not really put on a great performance. It's more fun when the host nation is kind of, I guess like a contender, Brazil, for instance, in 2014, they were a contender. Russia was kind of a dark horse, not really a contender. Nobody expected them to win, but, they were at least going to cause fits going into, to at least get out of the group stage and get into, the knockout round. Not a lot of high hopes for Qatar. They've never been to a World Cup before, and I'm not necessarily 100% positive that they would have qualified had they had to go through qualifying. If this was in another country, like if it was here in the U.S., which of course the next World Cup will be, I'm not necessarily sure if they would qualify or not. They are, they're a feisty team normally. They just didn't show that today. It'll be interesting how they respond because now they got two tougher matchups against Senegal, of course, without Sadio Mane, and against the Netherlands, who are a nice young team led by a manager who last time he coached the team was in 2014. This is his third stint as the Netherlands manager, and so like he knows how to drive this nation to success because he's done it before. But yeah, it'll be interesting where Qatar goes from here. Ecuador, I think, are on a good track. Of course, winning your first match is always important, and I think it'll be interesting to see where they go because they also have two tough matchups against, of course, the Netherlands next and then Senegal to end the group stage. Those are my quick thoughts on Ecuador, Qatar. Tomorrow is the big day. Tomorrow's the rest. Tomorrow's Senegal, Netherlands, the second match of Group A, and then of course we got the two matchups in Group B, starting with England and Iran, and then of course we're gonna end the day with the big kahuna, the big one, the one that I'm looking forward to the most, of course, as a United States fan, USA versus Wales, our first game since 2014, since we lost to Belgium. Think about that. Since we lost to Belgium 2014 in Brazil, the United States has not played in the World Cup. We've missed the entire 2018 World Cup. And it's been 8 long years. It's been 8 years since we've seen the U.S. in a World Cup. That is insane to me. And, we have the youngest squad. So we have, hopefully these guys come in there with this, like, kind of naivety and just kind of go for it. This is Wales' first World Cup in 50-some years. What is there to lose? Like, let's go for it. Like, let's do the thing. So I'm just really looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be a crazy day. It's going to be a crazy month. This week alone is just going to be insane. World Cup matches every day. Of course, we have Thanksgiving coming up. We got football today, and got to get to that here soon. But this is the beauty of kind of the World Cup being at this time of the year, which it never is. It's normally in the summertime when there's nothing else going on and it's the only thing. But this time it's going to be just hectic trying to keep up with that, trying to keep up with the NFL, trying to keep up with just anything sports, And on top of that, we got the holidays going on, and everything. But just enjoy it. Like, this is going to be the most beautiful month of sports that we're going to have, where we're going to have NFL and World Cup action going on at the same time. So match day 1 is in the books. Again, Ecuador beating the host nation Qatar 2-0 in a pretty dominant fashion. Qatar again had nothing to offer Ecuador. So I think we'll just wrap it up here. Just quick short episode, just kind of recap the one match of during match day 1. Like I said, sad to see the host nation kind of go out kind of sad like that. They have 2 more games remaining. Hopefully they can at least put up something for their for the fans that are obviously have invested a lot into hosting this tournament. And for Ecuador, don't drop the ball here. Like, you guys are leading, so don't mess this up. So with that being said, that'll be it for the first edition of the Kirby on Sports World Cup show. I am your host, Carlos the Swiss Army Knife. Martinez. Signing off. Again, we want to thank our sponsors: PM Plus Reserve, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corps, Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, and Barrett Pest and Termite Services. So with that, match day 1 is over, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you guys tomorrow for match day 2 and hopefully a United States win. Later.